Okay. And I'm going to wait just a second because we've got someone jumping in that I would like to have her introduce. Betty, can you unmute and introduce yourself? We just started.
So, Assistant Governor, can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little soft, but we can hear you.
Okay. Betty Young, Roswell, New Mexico, Assistant Governor.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Betty.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we are recording and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me here because I'm on a laptop computer, so it's a little bit different. Do you all see the manual?
Yes.
The Be a Vibrant Club? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge it. There we go. So this came out last year, and I was excited about it. I thought it was really well done. What I like about it, it's got pictures. It's not just words. The first couple of pages are a case study about a club and kind of what they did to improve and be more vibrant. There's someone that's talking. Okay. So there's a case study in here, which is interesting, but as we know, every Rotary Club is different. I think it's healthy to look at what other clubs do, and if you see something that you think would be workable, to try it. But as we know, not everything that works for one club is going to work for another. So case studies are good to review, and it's good to kind of think about them, but typically then clubs take that and come up with their own plans and their own ideas that may be based on what they've seen. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. The key page for us is this page here. This is kind of these 10 best practices. And if you hadn't noticed, because it's not obvious, usually for those of you who are internet savvy people, hyperlinks are usually in blue. But everything that's on this page that's in bold font is a hyperlink to something. Most of them go to something that's on the Rotary.org website. And I believe, because I've tried it, that the only way you'll be able to see them is if you log in to the Rotary website first and then click on the links. If you click on the links when you're not logged in, you get like an error. It just says, I can't find the file or something like that. So, and I think I sent you all the additional documents as in an email. But if you happen to lose it, you can just go over these, and every single one of them that has a bold font brings up a different file. What we're going to do is go through these one at a time. And as I said, I'd like for this to be a very open discussion. I have those other documents that I'll be bringing up, and we'll walk through them kind of not deeply, but we'll go over kind of what they are and how useful they are. I don't know about you all. Some of you have been in Rotary for quite a while. I think this is one of the best groups of Rotary materials that I've seen. I think the only other one that compares for me are the materials that Rotary puts together about the foundation. But all of this information here, and a lot of it's just been the last couple of years, is just outstanding. So we're going to take these one at a time. And again, feel free to just open up your mic and speak. You don't need to chat or send something into the chat. Just go ahead and open your mic as we go through these. So we'll go left to right, top to bottom, and we will open up those other documents to take a look at those as we go through them. The top two, to me, are kind of like two sides of a coin. They are linked, and so we'll go over both of them. But keep in mind that doing one without the other is not going to get you the best result. The first one is decide what you'd like your club to be like in 3 to 5 years. So some clubs and districts call this visioning. Others just call it planning. But the main thing is to think ahead. Now, it's interesting because we just went through and are still going through a significant crisis, which we didn't plan for. And Sonny happened to be the governor in the midst of all of that. And so what clubs decided what they would like to be in 3 to 5 years was disrupted. But having said that, a number of clubs have used what occurred during the pandemic and what's still occurring to find ways to strengthen their clubs, including adding more members or having more activities. So here was a situation where we didn't plan for something, but clubs have, in many cases, figured out ways to make lemonade out of lemons, for lack of a better term. So before we open up the materials, any thoughts, given your current roles, your experience, about this idea of thinking 3 to 5 years down the road, as opposed to what we often do, which is maybe just the current year? What's your experience with kind of longer term thinking and planning?
I'll mention, when we first saw COVID heading downward and we began adding meetings live in person, which we just recently did have meetings live in person, we've kind of made a long range plan that we're going to continue with both Zoom meetings and live meetings, depending on what people feel comfortable with. And who knows how long this is going to go on. I mean, so we're investing in equipment like we're getting an owl so that we can have a camera that points at whoever speaks at the meeting itself, while being able to project across all of the Zoom attendees as well. So we're kind of planning almost I don't want to say permanent Zoom strategy, but we're going to use a hybrid model and probably for the time being do both for quite a while.
And it's interesting too, what I'm hearing from some clubs is that even after this is over, and this may have been what you were saying too, but even after this is over, hopefully sooner rather than later, clubs may still be using Zoom for certain things, maybe to bring in speakers from outside the area, or to have members that may be not in the community but are still members of the club. So the whole online format may go beyond COVID just because clubs found that it added value.
Yeah, it was really good for us to do that at Metro because 2 of our members moved to South Carolina a month ago, and they're still members. so we bring them in, and then I have one member who's frequently on the road, and he's happy because now, if he's not in town, he can still join in. So having the hybrid has really been good.
One thing that we'll get to a little bit later, but it is something that we've needed to think about, is that because of this shift where people may not be in the local area and still be members because they can join remotely, we just need to make sure that our club bylaws reflect that membership is not limited to some geographic area if your club happens to do that. I'm going to ask, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll check that in our bylaws. I don't get.
It's just something to make sure, because again, that may be something that going forward, it makes sense for the club to continue to have people that are not in the certain geographic area be members. And so it's important that the governing documents reflect that. I'm going to ask, because of how this screen is set up, if Sonny or Bruce or Bob or John, if there is anything in the chat, please let me know, because I had to change my screen and I can't see the chat menu.
Yeah, I'll monitor that for you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay.
Thanks, Bruce.
So there's 2 documents here. Both are really good. One I think is outstanding. I'm going to open and we'll take a look at them. So give me 1 second. Let's look at the Rotary Club Health Check. Can you all see this? So this is one of the documents that comes up when you click on that Rotary Club Health Check link. But again, I think you have to be logged into My Rotary unless you use the one that I sent you. This is great. I've gone through this. I really like it. It's basically an assessment tool. And it's broken up into sections. So here you've got your club experience. And you basically check whichever boxes are relevant. And then for the boxes that have not been checked, meaning we're not doing this or I don't feel this. There's then like a series of things to do or things to consider doing to address the things that people say the club is not doing. And it breaks it into areas which I really like. I don't know if any of you have used this, but I like the format of this, the way it's broken out into sections. To me, I think it's a little more usable than like a long member survey would be, because I like how this is just broken out. And plus, it gives you suggestions for each area that you're asking questions about. And
Jeff,
again,
how did you get to this?
I'm sorry?
How did you get to this document?
So back in the Be a Vibrant Club manual, if you click on right here, Rotary Club Health Check,
Gotcha.
but again, I think you have to be logged in to rotary.org for the document to come up. But I also think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have my email, I think I sent you all of the attached files as well, did I not?
No.
You sent the Be a Vibrant Club, but not like the Rotary Health Check, I don't think.
Okay,
Hey,
The
Jeff.
Be a Vibrant Club
Hey,
is I got.
hey, Jeff. I was able to access them without logging in. So
really? Okay,
Yeah.
good to know. Okay,
Oh.
that's good to know. But if for some reason you click on this and it doesn't bring it up, I would try logging into rotary.org and then trying it again. But that's good to know. But yes, everyone, and that's why I said it's confusing because it's bold, and usually bold does not
Link.
suggest that it's a hyperlink, but they're all hyperlinks. Thank you. Okay, so as an example, let's look at the first section here. So this is about your club experience. And as we know, this is really important. I think one of you said you're a membership chair and also public image chair. When we're looking at member retention, when people leave Rotary, if it was not for, let's say, a change of job or something like that, they often leave because they just didn't have a very good experience. So this is really something we want to pay attention to. We want people in our clubs to be engaged, motivated. They feel they have a part to play in the club. They're not just there. So here's just a bunch of kind of considerations. And what you would do is you would just maybe distribute this amongst the membership and kind of see what gets checked and what does not get checked, right? So I look forward to attending club meetings. There may be some that are, I mean, I don't know about you all, I've heard that term Rotaries and name, Rotarians and name only, they're there, but they're just paying their dues and they're, so they may not check that box. We have a greeter who welcomes members to meetings, and again, these are just things to consider. It's not like you have to have a greeter, but they just want to get a flavor for what your members' club experiences are like. So the notion is if you distribute this amongst the club and you get a lot of these boxes checked, that's probably a good indication that your club is doing a good job in this area. It's not automatic, but I would suggest it's probably, it probably is a good thing. If on the other hand, a number of these boxes are not checked, then you would go to the second page where it has different ideas and suggestions. Again, that's what they are. They're suggestions. It's not everything that you can do, but these are just, I would say, natural suggestions based on what the responses were from the previous section. And you can see we've got change meeting format. If people are not engaged and they're just kind of there, then maybe change it up. And Rotary has done a really good job of introducing different types of meetings and different formats, things like that. Leadership skills training, we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then, experience beyond the club, getting them involved in other activities like Rotaract or RILA, fellowship and Rotarian action groups. Those are huge opportunities for people to be engaged. So this whole document is a series of how are we doing in this area? And if we're not doing well, what are some things we can consider? It's great. It's a great starting point. Have any of you used this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I highly recommend it. As I said, if I had to do kind of a long survey, versus something like this. I think this is a little more tangible. So I think it's very helpful.
What do
This
you
is
do
true.
when you hand out something like this to 30 members and you get 5 responses?
Oh, what a great question. So before I answer that question, does anyone who may have had an experience like that want to share what they did to increase, I guess, what I would call the response rate for something like this?
The silence is deafening.
Okay, well,
I have,
oh,
I
go
can
ahead.
tell you that one thing that works is to do it during a meeting. So you can get a lot of people right then and there and get some feedback and then follow up with the ones who are absent.
I would agree. I think the other thing is when I do something like this, I couch it in terms of importance to the club. What are we going to do with this? Well, generally speaking, people don't respond to a survey unless they feel compelled to. You think about like customer surveys for like businesses that you all use. The people that typically respond to surveys are the ones that are really unhappy or the ones that are ecstatic. And you lose a lot of the middle people, the ones who are, okay with things. But if you're distributing this, and I agree with Sunny, if you do it during the meeting, that's great. But I always think it's helpful to, as you're distributing it, you're reinforcing why it's so important for us to do this. What are we trying to accomplish with this? And hopefully that will motivate people because we're doing it to improve the club. So I think it's important to couch it some way, demonstrate that it's a valuable tool.
Might be fun to have an online version of the survey also to back up. I think doing what Sunny said,
Yes.
live in the club environment, you're going to get a lot of responses. They're sitting on the tables and we ask everybody to put their thoughts on it, but also to follow up with an online version that they could click within a browser and then hit submit. Make it nice and easy. That would be
Right.
great.
And if you're doing online meetings, you can do like a Zoom poll.
Yeah.
Stuff like this.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of options. But the key is going back to your original question. If you get a low response rate, it's difficult to use that then to make decisions because you don't know if you have a good sampling of the membership. So it really is important to do whatever you can without coercing people to get more responses than, a small number. It really is important.
Well, maybe if like when you're talking about doing it to improve the club, you emphasize too that it's important that you have a lot of responses. Otherwise, it's not going to be representative
Right.
of the club, so that people realize
That's right.
why their input is really needed.
Right. Every opinion matters. And as I said, my experience is it's the middle group that tends not to be too excited about doing surveys because they're kind of lukewarm. But you do get the hot and the cold because that's how they feel.
Jeff,
Yes.
I think it's important too to emphasize that the message "every opinion matters" is a good one to promulgate, even when you're not doing a survey. Because part of what
Right.
will have people be engaged is knowing that they're heard and that they matter.
And I would do exactly what you said, Sunny, in part just because you used the word promulgate.
Okay, yeah.
How can you argue
Jeff?
with that?
Jeff, can I
Yes.
add something?
Yeah.
I sort of dropped back a little bit on my sales background, and people need to understand why it's in their best interest to do something, including filling out one of these things, and share with them that you're trying to improve their experience in Rotary and get their feedback, and why it's important that you get that information from them, and so sell it to them why participating in this is going to help them as well as the club.
Right. That's right. So they're not doing it. So if I'm distributing it, they're not doing it for my benefit. They're doing it for the club's benefit and they're part of it. So it's
Yeah.
really for all of our benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point.
I'm president of a club that, as I look at the membership, I think most of them are in the middle. They're happy coming to meetings. They're happy with the programs. They're happy making donations. They're happy participating in some of the projects, and they don't really see a need for improvement. So how do I get them convinced that we can actually do improvement by filling out these forms?
Boy, another great question. Does anyone have a response to that? That is an excellent question, Barry.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think part of it is, so whatever the results are and whatever decisions made to take action on something, and it need to be actionable, and what members are thinking, or what the general membership is thinking, and so if it's not actionable, then I think members probably will lose interest.
Great point. Thank you. I think there was someone else.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Betty.
You're muted.
Yeah, okay, is that better?
Much
Yes.
better.
Yeah. I think one thing we need to take in consideration, back to that guy that says everybody's happy, they like what's going on. You do need to consider that eventually those members will pass on, and you need to try to attract the young ones to keep your club going. I am seeing other clubs die by the wayside because they are not being innovative enough to try and think, what are we going to be 3 to 5 years from down the road? Also, we need to encourage the younger ones to join, and they have a different mindset than us oldies. So we need to change sometime.
Totally agree. There's an adage in quality. So I've been in the quality profession for pretty much my entire career. And one of I think the most significant quotes in quality is, good is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
That we can feel good about things, and maybe we are doing good, but if we're comfortable with that, then we won't be great. We'll be good. And the problem with that is, and Betty and others have alluded to it, is that good doesn't sustain. Typically, things happen. And why should we be satisfied with just being good? If we want to hire a company to do, work on our house, do we want just a good company, or do we want a great company? We typically want the great companies, right? We also have competition. We have competition for members, we have competition for funding, and they are all striving to improve, all of them. So if we just stay the course, over time, we start losing more because we're not continuing to push and grow. So there's always that pressure, which is a good pressure, to strive to continue to do more and not be complacent.
Jeff,
Yes.
I just want to mention something that's kind of underlying everything you and Betty have said, which I agree with completely, and that is that as a president of a club, Barry, it's your job to provide some vision. If you're excited about a future or can paint a possibility, then that can shake people loose from complacency also.
Yeah. These are
I'm
great
trying to do that,
questions.
but I don't know how successful I am.
These are really great questions. And one of you mentioned the new members. I think it was Betty. It's so important to get everyone's feedback, but I would say especially the new people. New people haven't been in the club long enough to feel complacent, typically. They want to try things. That's just how they are. So oftentimes, club leadership may kind of look to the new members for ideas just because they haven't been in the club long enough to get in that kind of comfort zone issue.
Great point.
Okay, the other document in this section is the strategic planning guide. So again, this is another one of those hyperlinks that brings up a document. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I do want to go to this page right here. This is and again, I think Rotary has done a much better job the last few years kind of reinforcing the importance of planning and what we should be thinking about in terms of planning. So kind of giving us a template here. So look at these 4 phases. Determine your status. How is our club doing now? Well, the health check is a good tool for that. There's others, but that's a good one. Develop a vision. What do we want our club to be like? And again, this is not like a vision for September. This is a vision for like 3 to 5 years. I know of several clubs in our district that have longer term plans, I think 10 to 20 years. Part of that's, well, having a longer term view is often important when things that you want to do take more than a year, like some global grants or 3 to 5 years, and changing the culture is going to take time. So if everyone is focused just on a 12-month period, the longer term stuff, which may have greater impact, wouldn't get done. Then make a plan. So the steps that need to be taken to achieve the vision, and then track progress. And again, we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but all 4 of these are absolutely critical. And I would say if you're going to do one, you better do all 4, because if you miss one, it's just not going to work. So this is a really nice guide. It's got some nice tools and templates in it. We at the district have a strategic planning cadre of people that can help clubs with planning if they need some help, but this is really important. We've got to have a plan. It's one thing to think, I want to be like this in 5 years, or I want the club to be like this in 5 years. Without a plan, it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's only going to be by luck or circumstance, and they change. So it's really good to have a plan. Any
Jeff?
thoughts about, yes?
Yeah, Jeff, just a question. So we're in the process of doing a strategic plan, and so one of our members on the committee brought out like 3 or 4 strategic plans of prior terms and whatever. I guess the challenge is to implement and have it sustainable. But I was curious because I did see the district's strategic plan. How long did it take you all to put that together? And what was I mean, I imagine you followed this process, but how long did it actually take to put all that together?
Well, we happen to have the 2 architects of our 2 most recent plans. So Bob or Sunny, do you want to respond to that?
Sunny was really the initiator of our current strategic plan. She had a very well run long-range planning conference a couple of years ago, where we got the principles together and we talked about what we wanted to do over the next 3 to 5 years. And we put it in writing, and then everybody approved it. We put it on our district website. And then last spring, we had a review of that, and we're in the current process of updating that to make it current for our present situation. So it didn't take that long. It was just a matter of getting everybody, the principals, the people that were involved in it together, and spending a day and just talking about it, and then taking maybe a couple of weeks to review it and mull it over, and finally putting it together. But it didn't take a long time from my perspective.
I agree. That captures it, Bob. Thank you.
I would say, just for myself, because I was also part of that, I think that if you look at these 4 phases, phase 4 was probably the hardest one for us. Because that's the one that takes more time. That's the one you're doing continually once you've put the plan in place. And I think the same thing is true at the club level, that, it's one thing to develop the plan, but if you're not tracking progress and then using what you're seeing as a way to decide if the plan is working or not, if we need to make adjustments, that's when it takes more time, but that's where a lot of the improvements are made.
Jeff, I'd like to add, if I may, that phase 4 is not a matter of time so much as a matter of structure. If you have in place a structure where everyone knows which part of the plan is theirs and is set up to report regularly and to track progress, it works really well. Otherwise, it doesn't work at all.
And I guess also, Sonny, it's like, cascading the plan down to all the clubs,
Yes.
Yes.
So everything's aligned. So I saw that there's a membership strategic goal. And
Yes.
so, that's really on how well all the clubs do in increasing membership and,
You're right. Yeah.
implementing strategic imperatives that are going to cascade up to the district strategic plan.
And it's meant to, I think it was designed to be alignable. But
Yes.
each club still comes up with their own goals, their own strategies.
Right.
But I think that's kind of the partnership between the district and the clubs to say, we're all in this together. The district has a role, the clubs have a role. There's certain things we want to accomplish together. And yeah, I would say that I think Rotary has done a really good job with their kind of high level plan view. And I think the district has done a very good job with its view as well. What a perfect segue to our second path to vibrancy, which is this one right here. Decide on your annual goals and enter them into Rotary Club Central. Is there anyone that's not familiar with what Rotary Club Central is? If so, please speak up because I can't see the chat. Okay, that's good. Well, so here's the question. Why enter goals into Rotary Club Central? What's the value in doing that? Anyone?
Accountability.
Yeah.
How does that work? So how does accountability happen if I enter goals into Rotary Club Central?
Well, I think if you put them out there and everyone can see them, there's pressure to achieve them. It's kind of like, I mean, but didn't they always say like, well, what was it Brian Tracy says, if you like a goal that's not written down is just a wish or something like that.
Right. I totally agree. And I think that's similar to what let's put it this way. We also just talked about it when we had the other document open. There's something that links with accountability that if you don't use something like the Rotary Club Central, you can't do. It's that fourth box in that strategic planning guide, the monitoring progress. So when you put goals into Rotary Club Central, you're putting in targets, like we're going to accomplish this in a year or 3 years. The notion is that you're then monitoring progress in Rotary Club Central towards those goals. So Rotary Club Central, because it's linked to Rotary.org, it has updated information, and it should be accurate, regarding your club membership and your foundation giving, because those are things that Rotary tracks. So for those goals, if we log into Rotary Club Central halfway through the Rotary year, we should see progress because Rotary tracks those things. There are other goals that you have to manually enter, like volunteer hours for service projects. To me, that's a really good example because that's a good indication of how our club is doing the service. Those have to be manually entered. Rotary doesn't have an automatic way of tracking those. So the club secretary typically goes into Rotary Club Central and updates with, we did X number of projects the last couple of months. These are the number of volunteer hours. So the notion then is that you're monitoring progress against whatever goals you set. And if you don't have something like Rotary Club Central, then you don't have at least an easy way of monitoring progress. And if you don't monitor progress, then how do you know how you're doing? Have any of you, and Vicki, you're a current president, there may be a few others, any of you using Rotary Club Central yet as maybe a reporting tool for club assemblies to kind of let the club know how the club is doing towards its goals?
Not yet, but I I plan on getting in there and doing it.
Anyone else?
Good time to do it, Vicki.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, it generates these really nice looking reports. Again, I like the visuals. It does a lot of graphs and charts. It segments, let's say for membership, it'll segment out, let's say by gender, which is usually very interesting to know how the club is doing. And I think it also disaggregates by age groups. So it's very valuable. But again, if we're not monitoring progress, how do we know?
Jeff,
Yes,
Ava has her hand up.
go ahead, Ava. Sorry, I
Thank
couldn't
you.
see it.
Thank you. I'm wondering how we set realistic goals at this particular time. Let's take Pancakes on the Plaza, which is one of our biggest fundraisers. We have to start talking about that now, but how will we know if we'll be able to proceed? And if we don't proceed, where is that $100,000 going to come from that we usually give out as grants?
Excellent question. Does anyone want to answer that or kind of express maybe your experience with something similar where the plan had to be changed or something significant like this?
You know, Eva, I was thinking that the goal is the $100,000. The action plan is the
Hello?
Bruce.
I think
I
it's
think
froze.
it
Yeah,
goes.
it's
Oh,
froze up.
okay. He was
Jeff, I
onto
can-
something there. Hopefully it'll come back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that on. And Eva, this is really yeah, it's a difficult, you know, having been a club president, I didn't actually have to make a decision like this, but if I was put in that position, I would go ahead, I'd start out and say, okay, let's assume that by July 1st of 2022, that the COVID situation is going to be resolved, or at least at a point where we can do, you know, so you start by making assumptions. And you said, we're going to press ahead with this as though it's going to happen. But at some point in time, there comes a time where certain decisions have to be made, where money has to be spent, things have to be done. And that's the point at which you have to then make, you know, can we, you know, given the situation that we have now, can we proceed or do we have to put this off? I don't have a good, you know, and if you have to put it off, I'm afraid, you know, I don't think there's any way in such a short period of time that you're going to be able to do something else to raise that much money. You know, that's it's going to be you'll be a victim of that particular situation. But there are things you can go ahead and do early in the planning process. You can be ready to press on, and then if things change, then you'll have to go and take a different direction. Maybe you want to think about an alternate fundraiser. You know, how else? You know, ask the club. You know, how else can we raise money? We might not be able to raise 100,000. Our club, by the way, participates every year in Pancakes on the Plaza, the Del Sol Club. We always send about 10 or 15 people up there, flip pancakes. I've done that 4 or 5 times. We have a great time. But I can see that there's a lot of planning that goes in. There's a lot of things that have to happen. You have to commit at some point in time. You have to commit money to that. And that's usually where you have to make the decision. So I would not just assume that isn't going to happen. But I'd let everybody know that let's get started. And then at some point in time, you'll have to make that decision. Do we continue on and commit resources, or are we going to have to wait another year to do it?
Thank you, Bruce. And may I add also, Ava, 2 things. One is sometimes your donors would be willing to donate even if Pancakes on the Plaza doesn't happen, if you can find other ways to promote their name. And there is a long list of online fundraising ideas available on the Zone website. Jeff, maybe we could put that in the chat. I'll do that. Big things like an online silent or live auction, like we did for polio, you know, so you could have a backup plan for raising money.
And
I don't know if Bob is back yet. Oh, sorry.
I have, some organizations have done, and I think this happened even before COVID, non-event events with the idea of soliciting donations and saying, hey, you know, you don't have to dress up and come out and have rubber chicken, you know, just send us a check or send us the money, you know. And I think given COVID, if something has to be canceled, like the pancakes on the plaza, people might be very sympathetic to, you know, still donating, still the money that they might have paid to come out and have pancakes, they'd still pay as a donation.
I'd like to raise one issue.
Go ahead.
I just came to me again during this discussion. When I volunteered to take the office of president in the absence of our president-elect, I decided to investigate the websites. And I say the websites because there are too many. There's Rotary.org,
Yeah.
there's Rotary Club Central, there's a district website, there's Club Runner, and I don't know what else there is, but as I started investigating them, I became totally confused as to what is where. And I think that's something that Rotary should look at as to cleaning up its websites so that there aren't multiple ones and they interact in a way that is more useful than it is at present. Because right now, being computer literate, I am also totally computer confused with the Rotary websites.
Understood.
I'll second that. That's been
or-
one of my things and why I haven't put the goals in. I was like, forgot how to find where that place was in.
You know, Danette Wagner, our district secretary, the last couple of years has done that training for secretaries. And what's been great about it, first of all, it's been online, so it's been really easy for Danette to bring up the various websites, but she's showing the different ones. So in one setting, the people are saying or seeing, okay, here's what the district website looks like. Here's what it's used for. Here's how Club Runner fits in. Here's the Rotary International website. Here's what it's used for. So in one setting, the people who are attending are seeing the differences between them. Otherwise, I do agree with you, it can get very confusing.
Well, that may be good for a small segment of the clubs, but it certainly doesn't help club members and club officers to find what they want easily because of the plethora of websites and the lack of interlinking.
Well, I would agree with you because you said plethora, just like Sunny said promulgate earlier. So,
Yeah, I feel like if you have to have a whole seminar on just how to use the websites, that they are definitely overly complicated.
yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm not going to defend them, but I would just say they have made improvements, and there's more improvements that are available. I want to go back to something that Bob said. I don't know if Bob is back yet, but I think I know where
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Do you
Yeah.
want to finish your point? Because I think it was a.
Well, the point I was making, I don't know where I was lost, but in your plan, Eva, your strategic plan is to raise X amount of dollars, and then your action plan is how you're going to do it, and you probably have to then, as other people have mentioned, have more than one way of doing it based on what the environment you're going to end up in. So the plan is how you're going to raise the money. The goal is the money you're going to raise.
Right. And the way I would, I don't want to say restate it, but to me, that's a really key point. Plans are meant to be adjusted. They are not solid. Once a plan is developed, it's not like we can never change it. This is what it's going to look like for the next 3 years. I mean, look at all these COVID people, right? All these plans had to change, or they should have changed because circumstances changed. But what often changes in the plan is what Bob said, the how. The strategies may change. We don't want to change goals unless we have to. That especially what people often do is they'll say, well, we'll set a $100,000 goal and it looks like we're going to only make 30, so let's drop the goal to 30. It's like, well, that's a little lazy. Focus, if you need to make changes, focus on strategy first. Focus on the how. Circumstances dictate that we try things differently. So plans are meant to be reviewed, monitored, and adjusted if needed. That's another reason why we monitor, right? We don't monitor just to be happy with what we're doing. We monitor because we may need to see, gee, we're 6 months into the year and we're nowhere near our goal. What do we need to do differently? If we don't monitor, we wouldn't even know to ask that question. So for those of you who have not used Rotary Club Central yet, but plan to, I hope you find that it's helpful. I think it's great. I think Rotary has done so much to improve its website in spite of the fact that there's still confusion, but it has a lot more oomph to it than it did, let's say, 8-9 years ago. Okay, so you see those first two at the top kind of fit together. Have a sense of 3 to 5 years, set goals, and notice it says set annual goals. So if you have a 3 to 5 year plan, you should still have goals for each year that kind of lend itself to a 3 to 5 year ultimate plan, if that makes sense. And then enter them into Rotary Club Central. Okay, let us keep moving on. We're going to take a break in about 20 minutes. That'll be about halfway through. Okay, now we're going to shift a little bit. Hold club meetings to keep members engaged and informed. We remember back in the Rotary Club Health Check, there were some questions or checklists about how engaged were the members and so on. So this is a little bit tied to that. All of these, you'll notice they're all kind of linked. They're not like independent thoughts. You know, they all kind of fit well together. Well, so one way to do that, if you're in club leadership, is to find out what keeps members engaged and informed. I mean, everyone's different. Bruce and I are in the same club, but I'm not going to assume that what engages Bruce is going to engage Jeff. So we often do member surveys. And again, there's a link to one here, which is Rotary's one, and I have it. Let me bring it up real quickly. Here it is. Okay. This is a long document. It is 10 pages. Having done surveys for years, I will just say that I would not want to hand out a 10-page survey for people to fill out, especially if I don't want that 5% response rate like one of you mentioned earlier. Having said that, even though I wouldn't send out a 10-page survey, there are aspects of this survey that I think are very helpful. So maybe I would pull like snippets out of this to create something that I think would be more beneficial for our club and something shorter so that I get more responses. But here's a sense of kind of the different steps. Kind of like with planning, you know, you develop the plan, then you have to monitor or maybe adjust. You introduce a survey, and notice what it says here. And again, I think this helps with getting the higher response. Discuss why it's important. Don't just hand it out. Why it's important to the club, to all of us, not to the club president. Why it's important to us as a group to get feedback from everyone. So there's another reinforcement what we talked about earlier. Distribute the survey, whether it's done online. Most surveys are now done online. It's just easier. That also has improved the response rate. As opposed to like sending it through the mail. If you do it in person, like Sunny said, you know, hopefully the people will fill it out when they're there. Then maybe, again, just like with the plan, you have to analyze the data. You have to take a deep dive and take a look at it and say, well, what is this telling us? And the challenge in analyzing the data is that we are all different. You know, as I said, Bruce may have different things that keeps him engaged than Jeff. So when we analyze, we have to look at what's common amongst, let's say, a majority of the members, but then where are the differences? Like, what keeps the younger members engaged may be different than what keeps the older members engaged. So if I ask the question in the survey, what's your age group? What I can do is I can look at in the data the younger members versus the older and see if there is a difference. And if there is a difference, I can develop a plan that addresses what keeps the younger members engaged and what keeps the older members engaged. It's not an either or. But if I don't have that information, I really can't do that. Does that make sense? I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Would you,
Okay, here's a great one.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Hector and
question.
Vicky.
in order to track things like the age, would you actually have, would these be anonymous surveys, but they would put their age and maybe their sex on there?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for me, Vicky, I would always do anonymous surveys because I want people to feel like they can give open and honest responses. And there's always a hesitation if you say, put your name at the bottom or it's going to automatically do it, that there's going to be repercussions. So every time I do one, it is anonymous, but I do ask age group, gender, and how many years you were in Rotary. Those are the three things I typically ask. But if it's not anonymous, then you always run the risk of people not being open and honest in responses, and that skews the data. Then you're not really getting a true picture of what the club is thinking about.
Jeff?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing a survey for our club, and I was going to have one last question, which was, would you like to be contacted to discuss any of this further? If so, give us your name.
I think that's fine. It's optional.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, is there a sample? Do you have a sample of a survey?
Well,
that
so this document is that hyperlinked document in the Be a Vibrant Club. You can use it. I just feel like it's too long. But there's plenty of good snippets of information in here that you can use. I just feel like if you took this and sent it out, you would get a 5% response rate. It's just too long. And different clubs in our district do have surveys that they've used. And I'm sure you can ask them. Maybe at one of the President's Council meetings, you can ask if other club presidents can share their survey. I haven't seen a situation where people have not been willing to share what their clubs use. Okay, number 4, present the results. Isn't that a great idea? What would be an appropriate forum in a Rotary Club to present member satisfaction survey results? Like, how would that work? So let's say, Vicky, you're a club president. If you had done a member survey a few months ago, what would have been an appropriate forum to present the results to the membership?
Well, I would do it at a meeting.
What kind of a meeting?
Well, no, well, you could do it too. I mean, I would think at a regular meeting, at just a regular meeting.
Right. What I was looking for, which is fine, is but like something like a club assembly, like instead of having a speaker, you would be the speaker and you would be presenting the survey results to the club and saying, here's what you told us. And here's what we're going to do about it, which gets to like step number 5. But it's a great agenda item for an assembly.
We're so small, the word assembly doesn't apply to our club.
Got it. Okay. Well, so it would be a program around the survey results, not like a guest speaker. Yeah.
That's what I would definitely devote a meeting, not have something else. It would devote a meeting and then have, people would be able to discuss and give feedback and that kind of thing.
It is really important to present the results to the club.
Hey, Jeff, so Jeff, we get, our target is that we get like 33% of our membership at a meeting, right? So, and then that kind of changes from one week to the other. And so that's going to hit maybe a third of the whole membership. So, are there other avenues to post the survey where it's not, we're like the entire city can view it, you know, and see what members are
Right.
thinking. Maybe like Club Runner, I don't know, is there
Right, or send the results by email. You know, or maybe in the newsletter, if the newsletter is just for the members. But you make a valid point. If you're not getting, especially with COVID now, we're not getting the same level of attendance that we were getting before. And you want to make sure that everyone in the club sees the results, whether they attended the meeting or not. So you want to make sure you've got other vehicles, whether it's email or something. But you also, you're correct. I would be wary of sharing them outside of the club, because it's up to us to make the decisions. It's not up to the community.
Right.
Really good point. Allow time for members to ask questions. You know, this is not, I mean, there's a lot to consider here. And again, we're not a monolithic organization. We have very different people with different perspectives, interests.
Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you talked about presenting the result to the membership and talk about what the result of the membership was, is it right for us to say, oh, it kind of gives them a chance to have an ownership of what they presented on the survey and help them to become more engaged? Am I on the right track on that?
You certainly are. In fact, you'll notice here, these steps to me are sequential, not concurrent. So the notion here is, let's put it this way. If I'm the club president, I can develop an action plan based on the survey results without engaging the members in presenting the results. But I want to present the results first and see what the club thinks before I develop an action plan. Because I may be missing things. I don't want to think that I'm like the only one that should be looking at this. We all should look at it. And once we all look at it and allow time for asking questions, then we develop the plan, or we determine what we're going to do with it. Otherwise, it feels like, you know, Jeff, why did you even ask us if you already developed the plan? So yeah, I would say it's really important, and it does, if you do it sincerely and say, look, we're using this time during the meeting or whatever for us to look at it together. Yes, they should feel more ownership than if it's like, we did the survey and thank you very much for your responses and here's the plan. Any other thoughts on that? That was a great question, Betty. Okay, and then you make the action plan that addresses the needs of the membership, because that's why you did the survey in the first place. So as a response to the survey, kind of like what Bob was saying, here's how we're going to address what you want and need based on the survey responses. It will never be perfect because everyone's different, but getting those survey responses and taking a deep dive is really enlightening. And then take action, implement the plan, you know, like we talked about before, monitor and all that. The rest of this document are all of the different sections of survey questions. So I'm not going to go through those, but again, you can in your leisure. As I said, I like it, it's just too long. And it's interesting, you know, we talk about member engagement. Long surveys are inherently not engaging things. Just, it's, we really want you to be engaged. Here's a 20-page questionnaire for you to fill out. It just doesn't work. Okay, we've got a few minutes before I want to take a break. Let's get number 4 done here. Communicate openly in your club. Well, we talked before about being open and honest, right? That goes for the membership, it goes for the leadership, it goes for the club president. You know, honesty and transparency and being open is really important. I don't know about you all, but you can kind of tell, or you think you know, when what you're hearing may not be the whole story. And then you start thinking things and all of a sudden you're thinking things instead of listening. We just have to have that culture of being open and honest with each other. And I think that's just really important. I think part of the notion of Rotary Fellowship is having that type of relationship where we can be open with each other. Especially now, I mean, this has been a very stressful time. And, you know, I work in healthcare, and a lot of people in healthcare needed, you know, counseling because it's been so stressful. It's hard sometimes for people to be open with their feelings when they're stressed. But I think it's our responsibility to kind of demonstrate that by being open ourselves. You know, we can't require everyone else be open if we can't be open ourselves. So if those member survey results didn't look good, I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to show it and say, this is what we all came up with. Let's discuss this in an open and honest, respectful manner. So this is really important. I don't know if you all have any experiences in your Rotary clubs where, and again, I certainly wouldn't want you to mention names, but any occasion where you got a sense that you didn't have that degree of open, honest communication amongst the members.
I have one thing I'd like to share real briefly. One time I sent a sympathy card to a friend who had lost not a significant other, just a friend. And I got a call from him for 15 minutes telling me how much he appreciated that level of outreach. It made me realize that we could be doing a lot better job at just staying in touch with people and letting them know that we care.
Yeah, it means a lot. It really does.
Yeah, one other thing on the survey, Jeff, is that, you know, the first survey sent out, maybe if your club hasn't done that, is use that as a baseline, right? For future surveys, see how you're doing. You know, are you actually making improvement or not?
Yeah, basically that, boy, that is so right on. It's something we talked about earlier. It was in one of the documents, is you need to know the current state. Because if you don't know the current state, how do you know if the future state's a better one or not? So you kind of want to have a baseline. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a member survey, maybe it's a good idea to do a follow-up survey the next year.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's nice, but it would be nice if the follow-up survey reflected that at least some improvements were made. Absolutely. That's a great point.
Jeff, we can hear and understand you, however, you're warbling a lot. Do you have any?
Really bad, really bad.
Yeah.
So the microphone is warbling?
Yeah, badly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not. Was it doing that the whole time?
No,
No,
it just
just
started.
No.
Let me know if we're going to take a break in a few minutes. Let me see if I can adjust my
Okay.
microphone. It just might be the signal here. Thank you for letting me know. You're not missing much if I'm not talking. The only other thing I wanted to mention here before we take our break is this grant center here. This is the Rotary.org grant center. If Arturo is on, he can speak for hours about the value of the grant center. And Sonny and Bob also can, but the main thing here is,
Website.
I'm sorry?
I said the fourth website.
Yes. Yes, although it's a subpage to another website, but be that as it may, the brand center is really important because we want to make sure in our social media, in our letters, all of that, that we're using the right logos, the right brand. We want to be up to date with that because there was a change to the brand by adding the word Rotary to the wheel a couple of years ago. So the brand center is great. I use it for emails and for agendas and things like that. So it's a good place to get Rotary logos and brands. Plus you can make your own for your club using their templates. So it's a great tool.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes.
Maybe if you turn off your camera, you might be having a bandwidth and packet loss. Maybe if you kill your camera for a minute, your voice will come back. Let's see if that works.
Camera is off.
Nah, it doesn't
So
matter.
It's not making a difference.
Doesn't matter.
Everyone, I also want you to know that Arturo has created club logos with the new brand for every club in our district. So you can get in touch with Arturo and he can send that to you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. So we will reconvene at 30 minutes after the hour, if this were the Today Show. So we'll take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 9:30. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
See you soon.
Okay.
So I'm on my phone. Hopefully the volume or you're not hearing the warbling. Thanks for putting up with Wi-Fi Zoom from a hotel. Okay, before we go on, we've gone through 4 of like the 10 best practices, and we're about halfway through. How is this working for you so far? Is this helpful?
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Anything we can do differently?
I think you're on it.
We're on it? Okay. We talked about monitoring plans, and if you're not monitoring a plan, how do you know how you're doing? As a trainer, I monitor for training too. So it's like, if you said, Jeff, this is just awful, then I've got an hour and a half to make adjustments. I've done it before. So I always will ask how things are going. And just like what we said with surveys, we need open and honest responses. So, all right, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
If it were awful, we would have disappeared, Jeff.
That's true. Hey, if it was awful, I would have disappeared.
It'd be like this.
Okay. Are you all seeing the document again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the last 6 will take the second half of the training. The first 2 take a while, so we're fine on time. Prepare members for future roles to smooth leadership transitions. Boy, I like that word, smooth. Not chunky, but smooth. So succession planning, training people to serve in leadership positions. How are you all doing with that? How's that working in your clubs?
Horribly. I can't get anyone to participate. I don't have a president-elect. No positions filled, no one volunteers. But we're a tiny club now.
Yeah, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you introduced yourself, so Mesilla Valley kind of restarted recently, though, didn't it?
That is correct.
So is it possible that it's just because things are still kind of new?
Yeah, well, we were out of commission for about 2 months.
Oh, okay.
It's not all that new.
Okay.
But
So
we've lost a third of our membership. So we're down to 15 people.
Right. Okay. So thank you for sharing. Unless you want to share more about things that you've tried, and has your assistant governor been able to help with that?
I think our assistant governor is that Leah Jordan.
That's your lieutenant governor.
Oh, okay.
I think it's Nikki.
Oh, okay.
I could
Yeah,
be
I would-
wrong, but yeah. Talk to
I would-
Nikki.
Okay.
Yeah, I would talk to you. I mean, that's partly why we have assistant governors, is to help with things like that, which are very challenging. And I would certainly pick her brain. She's great.
Okay, thank you.
And I know this is off topic, but I just want to say, inviting people or asking people to take on bite-sized things can really help too, because that way you get something done without daunting people. So set up a potluck or a first Friday at a bar, or collect hygiene things for homeless people, something that's easy, but still has accomplishment and fun in it.
I don't know if this would work. I haven't tried it, just the way I'm thinking about it, but we talked about engagement and surveys and checklists and all of that. If we're going to be open and honest with the membership, and someone had mentioned earlier, how do we make sure that they feel like they own what we're going to do? It may be reasonable after something like a survey to say, okay, here were the results, and we all have a role in moving our club in the direction that we want to move it in. What role would you like to have in doing that? It's like, so how the notion of ownership,
it's hard for someone to own something if they don't have a role. Doesn't mean they can't, but maybe couch it in terms of, we're all in this together to help us move the club to where we want to move it to. What role makes sense for you in that?
Mhm.
Another thing that I'd like to bring up, Rotary is really opening up their concept of how clubs are run. They're trying to increase the flexibility and the innovation. And we've got at least 2 clubs now that have co-presidents. Rotary International doesn't have a place in their database for co-presidents, but we have two clubs right now that have co-presidents, and so that's something else we could think about in terms of smaller clubs, especially where we could have co-chairs, co-presidents, where the responsibility is shared and one person doesn't feel like the burden's all on them.
Andrea, I'm
yeah.
also willing to, I'll put my name and contact in the chat. I'm the district membership chair, and I'd be more than happy to chat with you on anything if you need it.
Thank you.
I have to interrupt just for a second. I got a text from our illustrious public image chair, Arturo, who's not able to join us this morning. And as you can imagine, if you know Arturo, he wants a picture taken. So, I need to stop sharing the screen because I don't think he wants a picture of the document. So give me 1 second.
I think you should send him a picture of a document.
That would be funny.
All right.
Fix my hair. Okay.
I think
Oh,
this
Andy, you
picture
look
tells us
adorable.
that Jeff has
He's
a,
not even here, and he's nudging.
Yes, he is a great nudge. District nudge. That's him. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff Weinrich's split personality on this screen.
Right.
And what I like about I love Arturo. What's great though is that he always will use Rotary hashtags with his posts. People on a Zoom meeting, he typically won't put like Rotary in action because this isn't really like action, like we're out doing a service project or something. He'll use other hashtags. He's very sensitive to that. And I don't know if you've all noticed, but again, I think our district and our clubs are doing a much better job of when they're posting pictures, they're not just pictures of like handshakes in front of a banner. They're they're pictures of Rotarians doing work. And from a community perception, that's very, very enticing. Okay, where were we? Leadership training. Yes. So we heard, Andrea, about your experience, and yes, I would reach out to Nikki, and that does happen. The sooner the better. Even when we're vetting potential members, be thinking about, what role would they want to have, and kind of get them something excited about right off the bat. Any other thoughts on succession planning? And by the way, we also have the Rotary Leadership Institute, which is a great vehicle in our district to help either current leaders or potential leaders kind of grow in their roles in Rotary. So there's plenty of tools and vehicles to help people in their leadership path in Rotary. Any other thoughts on that one? Job descriptions would be nice. I'd like to know if I'm being asked to do something, what my responsibilities are and what the expectations are. Rotary has some job descriptions for like key committee roles, club president, but there may be others in your clubs where you would all have to develop them, or maybe just like a bulleted list. Let people know. So any other thoughts on that one? I don't know. Well, let's say it this way. I think part of this whole notion about being a vibrant club is the path to vibrancy. It's not, we may be great right now, but we should have a path forward, and succession planning and growing leaders is a huge part of that path going forward. One of you mentioned, people die or they leave and things happen. You always want to have a pipeline and keep that pipeline flowing. with people and ideas and all of that. It's an ongoing, continual activity for the organizations that appreciate it. So, okay.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
just a question, a quick question. So does Rotary have like a, portal to drop in these documents for membership to go in and, look at them at a club level, kind of like a share file or something like that? I'll tell you, one of the things when I came in as treasurer and I was starting to work on the budget with the incoming president, before my term actually started, I learned so much about how the club was organized and the initiatives that we work on, and what's included in the core club, and then other affiliates that we have. So I really got a better understanding on how the club operates. But as for that, I really, I go to meetings and I read about Rotary and newsletters and stuff like that. But to get a repository where you can go in and access club documents and things like that, does Rotary have anything like that?
Well, I think the closest thing that they have to that is Learning Central, which is available to all of us that have, Rotary.org logins. We can access these types of documents about each of the key club roles: president, secretary, membership chair.
Yeah.
So that would be like the one place I would recommend people go for what Rotary has identified as those key roles.
So
but I'm not.
For example, Jeff, for example, Jeff, so we just had a change in one of our committees, right? And it's kind of a change from one day to the other. And so the incoming chair really had to there wasn't a charter document with a high level process of what you need to do throughout from start to end on this annual project. And so it was basically kind of like the incoming chair was on the committee and kind of did a really good job. We did a great job, especially in COVID. But that would be an example of where you document committee charters and processes, and work plan, things like that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. As I said, I'm in the quality field. One of the things we always say is, document or else.
Yeah.
Not if it's only in someone's head, that's great as long as that someone is cogent and hanging around and so on. But it's not a sustainable approach, right? You want to document things.
That's right.
A point. The other resource we have, which may be applicable to some of the roles, is for the last several years, we've been recording the district assemblies, which have basically been trainings for different people in different roles, like training for presidents, training for secretaries, membership chairs, and all of those are on our district YouTube page. So if someone's stepping into a role and they didn't take that training, those recorded trainings are also available.
Okay.
It wouldn't be for everything. They're just for the committee roles.
Yeah.
Did
Awesome.
you say those are on YouTube?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And I also agree, someone mentioned earlier, maybe start, I think Sunny, when people are kind of new to the club, maybe start with small roles, kind of get them acclimated, but that's what that pipeline is like, right? It's not a gusher immediately, it kind of grows. So, okay. Next, adapting club bylaws. And this document or this hyperlink here opens up a Word file with like bylaws template, like a draft that your club can use. But typically clubs have their own bylaws. Every couple of years they get amended. But so we don't need to open the document, but it is something we need to think about. We already talked about perhaps adapting bylaws if we're going to have people as members who are not in a geographic area, because before we had online meetings, people were in a geographic area, right? So typically the bylaws have something in there about the members reside in a certain area, and maybe that needs to change, but that's just one area. There may be other areas where bylaws need to change. So for those of you who are familiar with your club's bylaws, what are some areas of the bylaws that may need to be adapted or adjusted given how Rotary clubs are now, given or compared to how they were maybe 10 years ago?
Well, we shrank the number of board members, have kind of consolidated service projects and donations or grants, development. So we don't have 14 people on our board anymore.
Okay. And was that done not because your club has been growing, right? It's not like you reduced the size of the board because you got smaller, right?
Right. We just saw that it didn't make sense to have a quorum of 7 or 8 each time. And the work is still being distributed evenly, but we don't have everybody on the board.
Yeah,
and actually we adapted ourselves according to Rotary's recommended board structure for different size clubs. So where do we find that? That's in Rotary Leadership Institute, isn't it, Jeff?
It is, and I don't think it's in any of these documents, but there is in Rotary Leadership Institute those 3 kind of models for the very large club and the medium-sized club and the small club.
And I'm betting that it's on the Learning Center too, if you have a My Rotary account.
How many websites does that make?
Barry, there's a lot of stuff on Rotary.org. Things that look like separate websites to you, actually one website that has Rotary Club Central and the Learning Center and the Brand Center. It's all right there on one website.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, yay.
Yeah.
We grow stronger when we learn something every day, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
They say that in website design, if you have to scroll to find something that you haven't done a good job, that websites are in reasonable sizes. And because of that, there's a lot more links to other things because you don't want to have like one page that's too long, like a member survey. So like Rotary.org, like Sunny was saying, there's a lot of links to other pages so that you're not scrolling a lot to try to find things. Okay, that was a very good example, Sunny. Other examples of things in the bylaws that may need to be adjusted or adapted?
Jeff?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Governor.
Rotary International, banging the drum there about them becoming more flexible. They've been making changes to their bylaws, and when they change their bylaws, they don't send out a blast and say, hey, we just changed this. They just do it and expect you to know that. One example that just came up was I had one club ask me about membership or attendance requirements from Rotary International. I want to make sure their club is in compliance. Well, there are none anymore. I went in Rotary International bylaws, and the Rotary International does not require us keeping track of attendance anymore. And they used to. And so that's another example. Clubs may have that in their bylaws. They have attendance requirements to be in compliance with Rotary International, which it doesn't exist anymore. So periodically, clubs need to go back to Rotary International, review their bylaws, and make sure that they're not overly restrictive.
Some of the other things that we were looking at, Jeff, is also what type of members there are, because we had created tiered members, that some folks that can't afford the larger with the lunch amounts, and then also looking at what kind of meeting there is instead of every Thursday, maybe 3 in 1, or, doing more membership drives, that kind of thing.
Unless it's changed, unless Rotary has changed, there are two primary governing documents. There's bylaws and there's a constitution. And the constitution doesn't have the flexibility that the bylaws do. The constitution is something that Rotary provides every club, and all they do is put in the name of the Rotary Club and kind of where they are, and that's it. Everything else is standard language. But the bylaws are what we have the opportunity to make flexible and adjust and fit what our club is. And that's the one where you've got all of these opportunities. Constitution is standard, but this is where all of the nuance to me is what's going to be in the bylaws. Size of the board, types of members, satellite meetings, all the different diversity and flexibility and all the things that I think Rotary has acknowledged that the whole model has needed to be modified and improved. And I think the model for each club should be reflected in its bylaws and needs to be continually updated. And it's a good idea for the members, especially the new ones, to be acclimated to what's in the bylaws. Now, it may not be something where it becomes a reading exercise where you're reading a 30-page document, but I think it's good for all the members to be aware of what's in the bylaws. So for those of you who are current presidents, I know there's a few, or maybe past presidents, what was your experience with bylaws and kind of the club awareness of what was in them, or maybe non-awareness?
Well, I can say that having been a member of our club for now 4 or 5 years, I've never seen the bylaws.
Thank you for being open and honest about that.
And I'm the president.
Yeah. So this, I'm glad we're going over this. This is, it's not something that we get reminded about often, but it's an integral part to the club, right? I mean, it provides, governing documents should be what we work under. And if we don't know what's in the governing documents, how do we know that we're working under them or aligned to them? Yeah.
Shouldn't every new member get a copy of the bylaws?
What do you think? Or what do you all think? That was an open question, not to you, Vicky, but to anyone. What do you all think about that?
I think that's an excellent idea. I think that probably 80% of the members won't read them, but they'll have them.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah,
we revised our bylaws last year, so and we went over them. We went over everything with the membership in a meeting as to everything that was changed and that was in there. And obviously they had to vote, they voted on it, but
right.
We actually all went over them together.
Yeah, one idea, something we do, maybe it's a lot of clubs do this, but we do this membership directory, little book. We didn't do it last year because of COVID. And in this book, we actually have the bylaws. So every member really has the opportunity to, to read them, have them. So anyway.
Oh, and then they're also, I know our bylaws are on the website.
Right.
Posted. So, any member who didn't happen to have could get them there too.
Yeah, so it's just good to keep them up to date. I mean, this is not. I mean, there's some people, like, I don't know if any of you are lawyers, but lawyers typically love getting into language like what's in bylaws and things. But for a lot of us, it's kind of a bit tedious. But it really is important to make sure that they are correct, updated, relevant, timely, all of those things. And I think it's every 3 years that Rotary International may make an adjustment to the Constitution, which they then provide to the club. So at a minimum, clubs should be reviewing these documents every time Rotary International makes an adjustment to their club constitution. But I think it should be every year, honestly. So again, there's a lot of flex, and the more flexibility that Rotary is promoting, the more flexibility that can be reinforced in the bylaws. So a lot of opportunities for clarification on what's going to change with our club if they're included in the bylaws. Any other thoughts on this one? Again, if you have a lawyer, this is what will engage them. They're working on language. Okay. Developing strong relationships within your club. Okay. So I'm going to bring up this introducing new members to Rotary for a second. Here we go. I like this document too, although it's lengthy, but it's okay. It's not a survey. By the way, this may be obvious, but these are new members to Rotary, but they're also young, right?
Yeah.
Nice. See, always thinking about public image. You could have new members to Rotary and they're not young like this, and it wouldn't be quite as enticing to look at, would it?
Hey.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah, really.
why?
That's
There's
ageist, Jeff.
Well,
Age doesn't matter unless you're a cheese.
it's reinforcing a message, which is we need to promote Rotary to younger people. I mean, my guess is that the people who put this together, that it was not a coincidence that they chose these three people.
Yeah.
So it talks in here about things like a new member orientation program. So what type of training or orientation is given to your members? Your clubs have an orientation program for new members?
I haven't seen it in years.
We do. We have STAR.
STAR?
Yeah.
And what does that stand for?
Actually, I have no idea, but the program is to orient new members for the first year.
Cool.
Kind of coaching and mentoring them and helping them decide what committees to be on and showing them all the opportunities within Rotary. So
that's
we
perfect.
conduct that meeting once per month and invite all new members to go through that process.
That's excellent. Great. Anyone else?
You know, that was my first job in Rotary, was in our club, was the new member orientation. We call it a red badge. I think a lot of clubs do.
Mhm.
And I did some renovation on it. And one of the things I did is I just Googled it, and lots of clubs have put on in the internet how they do new member orientation. So that's another resource you can go to if you want to modify or initiate that.
Thank you. Here's another important aspect to engaging the members, and that's the idea of mentors. Someone that can kind of show them the ropes. Not everything can be learned by reading the bylaws or even sitting through a training, but having someone that can kind of talk them through things. I know for me, that was really helpful. Interestingly, my mentor was one of the most active members of the club, and as soon as I got involved, she left.
Wow.
I think it was a coincidence, but I was like, wait, mentor, don't leave. But yeah, just having someone that can, help them along. I mean, people have questions, and it's just good to have someone that they can talk to and that is assigned to them. I mean, it's one thing to say, well, you can always talk to the club president or you can always talk to the secretary, but it's nice to have someone who's kind of like dedicated to do this.
Do you think it should be like one person for every, well, I guess it depends on how many new members you get, because if you had a ton of them, one person could, but like rotate among the members, have various people be mentors?
What do you all think?
You know what, I mean, what Andy pointed out, with our STAR program. So we have a chair, co-chair, and these guys, anybody can pick up the phone and call them and they're going to help you out. So that I think in our club, that would be, key individuals for new members, but I think it's important to have a mentor or somebody you can contact and ask questions on how things work or where to find things or whatever.
And maybe that should also be the sponsor to a degree, right? Whoever sponsored them coming into the
Yeah,
club.
but
they
not
would-
necessarily. Some people are great sponsors and not such good mentors.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Plus,
And you know what?
them-
Some sponsors may not even know the entire organization as well, right? So they're
That's true.
not as well versed.
If you're going to do mentors, you probably want at least a brief job description so they know how to know that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, and then you're also getting a consistent message. You're also getting some commonality of new members' needs and questions and things like that, you know.
Right.
I think it's actually important that the sponsor not be the mentor, because that connects the new member with someone else in the group, not the person they already know.
Good point.
Right. And going back to, I think it was your question about, is it okay? You know, what do you think about having different people? I think it's fine to have different people. I think what you lose is if I have one dedicated mentor, that mentor gets to know me very well, my interests. If I'm going to a group of people, the likelihood is that no one of them is going to know as much as if I had a single person who was kind of like dedicated to me. So it just kind of depends.
That's not what I meant. I mean, each
I'm sorry.
new member would have one mentor, but
Oh, yes.
but there wouldn't
Yeah.
be just one person who mentors every
I
new
see.
member.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Jeff,
seen
Eva
situations.
has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Could I please have an example of let new members know how they can involve their families?
Involve their families. You mean like in a service project, maybe?
I don't know, it's underneath involve and connect members. Let new
It's
members
like
know
join.
how they can involve their families.
Sorry, we hadn't gotten there yet, but yes, I mean, so it's good to get families involved, whether it's service projects or social activities that the club is doing, to get the families involved. I think it just adds to the fellowship to get to know the members' families and have them be, you know, I don't know what the official name is, but you know, like spouses of Rotarians who often go to the events and they do all of that. They're like Rotarians, but they just haven't maybe joined. But I think the idea of involving families in the work that the club is doing, I think is a good idea.
Basically an open door policy. Families are invited, you know, makes a
Right.
big difference.
So this is a great document. Again, it's got a lot of useful information in it. The main thing is that for those of you who have been involved in membership, we want to engage everyone, but new members are a unique challenge and opportunity because they are new. That they may not understand everything that the club does initially, so they're trying to understand, which is why the mentor is important. They're not in a comfort zone with the club because they haven't been in the club long enough, so they may have the new ideas and things that the club hasn't thought about. So whatever your approach is to engage membership, people that are new to the club provide a unique opportunity that maybe the people that have been in the club longer, maybe a different approach. So anything else about this notion of being a vibrant club? The strong relationships, and we talked about this before, everyone is different, but we're all in Rotary, right? So we have certain things in common, like the four-way test, ethical values, things like that, but we're all different. So the relationships with different people may look different. So it's not like I'm going to have the same relationship with Bruce as I have with everyone else in the club, but I want to have a relationship with everyone in the club, even if they are different. Does that make sense? We really need to get to know people. And as we talked about before, it is harder, not impossible, but it is harder to develop relationships over Zoom.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's just harder. You're not with them. It's just a different dynamic with people. If you already know them, then it becomes a little bit easier. But if it's new people, it's
Mhm.
just not as easy if you're not with them in person. But right now, we kind of have to, again, make the best of the opportunity we've been given.
And
Okay,
appreciate
go
what
ahead.
a great opportunity we have, because we have El Paso and Santa Fe and everything in between on this call, you know?
Yes. I work for University of Mexico Hospital, and we still conduct a lot of our business meetings by Zoom. But I told people, I said, once we get back to meeting in person, you're all going to have to walk around with virtual backgrounds, because otherwise I'm not going to recognize you.
And wear pants.
Yes. Yeah.
That's fine.
It's just really ironic. I don't know if you've all noticed this, but when people are on Zoom meetings, they don't want to have their camera on when they're eating. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, if we were meeting in person, people bring food all the time. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are you okay with us watching you eating food when we're right in front of you, and you're not okay when you're eating food? It's very interesting. But we are learning a lot about each other through a very challenging time. Okay, 3 more. Make sure all members are involved in activities that genuinely interest them. There's a lot to unpack here. So given what we've already talked about, is there anything you can think of that we discussed that fits well with this notion of making sure that all members are involved in activities that genuinely interest them?
And how do you find out those interests? We tried.
What a great question.
We tried circulating a questionnaire asking people what they're interested in and what projects they might be interested in pursuing. And the response I got was 0.
Oh, okay. We talked about that before, right? If we get low response rates, we've got an issue because we're not learning anything, right? And there's usually reasons why people are not responding, like they weren't convinced that it was really important or something like that. But it is really important, because you're right. You want to gauge their interests. You don't want to assume you know them, but it's really important for them to provide that feedback. The only other way you're going to know is by observing them. But even observing them, you're not going to get a full picture.
Right.
And I think it's also, a new member may not know what service projects are going on, or what, the different things going on in the club that they can get involved in. I think one of the things in STAR was that that was a meeting. That was one meeting, every month that the group got together, kind of explaining the structure or service projects, and try and get new members involved in a service project or 2 or more.
Yeah.
We have exit, or some clubs have exit surveys, or people leave a club. Why are you leaving our club?
Yeah.
I think it's not a bad idea to also do entrance surveys to find out, why are you joining our club? What are your interests? What would you like to get out of your membership with our club?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great retention tool, right? Because exit survey is a lagging indicator. And so
yes,
to really drive, retention, that would be a great idea.
Yeah, we don't give
actually
grades.
not just for new members either, starting with why for every member, why are you in Rotary can be a stepping stone to figuring out what interests them.
Yeah, and I think it's what I'm understanding in our membership is, the first 2-3 years is critical, and making sure you retain members.
We don't grade trainings, but if we were grading trainings, Hector, you would get an A+ for using lagging indicators. That was awesome. So here's something else to think about, which the first time I heard it, I kind of glossed over it. It didn't really register, but over the years, it has resonated. So there's four ways to state this. There's 4 scenarios. Each one is significant, but in this particular case, one of them is really significant. So here they are. I want to make sure I get this right. I don't know what I don't know is one. I don't know what I know is the second. I know what I don't know is the third, and I know what I know is the fourth. Each one is relevant to a different scenario. This one, the issue, I think, is the I don't know what I don't know. If you're a new member and you don't know what Rotary offers, then you don't know how you can fit, right? So it's really incumbent upon us as the people who are already in the club to share what Rotary does so that new members know. And then they can figure out where their interests can fit, because they have a general understanding. They're not going to necessarily know everything, but a general understanding of what Rotary does, so they can figure out where that fit is. In the Rotary Leadership Institute, one of the best modules is the one that's called Rotary Opportunities. Again, it's not everything, but it's like, here's different things that Rotary does that you might not have heard about, things that may be of interest to you. And the more we share those opportunities, the more new members can kind of figure out, with maybe the help of a mentor, where their interests fit. Because the I don't know what I don't know is not the fault of the person that doesn't know. They're being honest, saying, I don't know what I don't know. You're not sharing with me what I need to know, so I just don't know.
I think it's important to encourage people to attend Rotary Leadership Institute, because, I mean, I've been friends with some of the people in my club for many, many years, and they never really shared a lot of stuff about things like fellowships and Rotary Action Group. So until I started attending trainings and things, I had no idea of the like huge amount what's out there in Rotary. It's like so huge. And I think it can be kind of hard maybe for people, you know, in the club to share all that, because they have their own particular interests, you know, and they might not be the same as the new member. So they might be interested in Rotary Action Groups, but never do fellowships. And so the trainings are really good, I think, at introducing new members to all of that.
Yeah. So I usually don't call out anyone because I want this to be kind of just the open, interactive discussion. But my pal Bruce has been awfully quiet. I'm sure you've got something to add here, Bruce.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, a little history. I was asked to be the membership chair back in 2005, I think. And one of the things that I did, and one of the things I was asked to do, was to create a membership, a welcome for new members. How do we bring them in, and what should they need to know, and so I put together a slideshow actually of different things, and which included a little bit of the history of Rotary, the history of our club. But one of the things that we did over the years is we developed a relationship with our potential members, and we took them out to lunch before they joined the club. And what we wanted to know was what their expectations were. What do you expect of Rotary? Why is this something that you're interested in? On the other hand, we wanted to know what we expect of them as Rotarians. And wouldn't you know, the very first time we did this was with a young lady. She's very fairly young, only been married for a year or so, or a couple of years, I guess. She'd been married for a while. And she had very young children and a very young child about to start school. And when she found out at that time, attendance was much more important. And when she found out our attendance requirements, she said, I can't join you because I can't come. And so we knew right off the bat that it wasn't going to work. And so we parted. But it was very, very important to know what the member expected and what we were going to expect from them. And that has worked well since then.
Bruce, that's a great idea. We do that in our club too. So,
by the way, if you're interested in that, the 4 statements about I know what I don't know and all of that, the other interesting part of that is that I know what I don't know is maybe the greatest state of personal maturity, because it's an understanding of what you don't know. And in Rotary, just like in anything in life, there's always more to learn and more opportunities. So it's kind of humbling and reassuring when people say, I know what I don't know. That just means that there's more to learn. Anyway. Okay, and it talks here about a member interest survey and all of that. And again, I think what one thing we haven't talked about yet today, but it is important in being a vibrant club and everything that Rotary is trying to see accomplished, is the idea of diversity. And we talked before about, people are not the same, even though they're all united by Rotary, we still have differences. So I don't want to assume that what is interesting to Bruce is going to be interesting to the other 40 or 50 people in the club. I need to know individually, really. And that's why that training and the mentorship really becomes important, because it's individual. And each niche is for that one person in the whole world of what Rotary has to offer. And again, if new members are not involved early, it's more likely they're going to move on. So it is when new members leave, it's on us. It's usually not on them. Okay, anything else about that one? We've got 2 more left. Okay. Coaching new and continuing members in leading. Okay, so there's one more document here, so let me bring that up. See if I can find it. Where are you? This one. Leadership in action. So this was an interesting one, if you all get a chance to take a look at it. What you link to is a brochure, like Be a Vibrant Club is a brochure. So this gets even worse. It links to another brochure that then says download Leadership in Action right here. And it downloads a zip file with like 10, yes?
Yeah.
And we're just laughing.
Oh, sorry. So you open this one, click on this Leadership in Action, and it brings up a zip file with 10 different Word files in it, each one with a different aspect of leadership. It's great, but it's very confusing, just to add to our already significant state of confusion.
No comment.
No.
Yeah.
So it's really a training program, this Leadership in Action. And I, as someone who's a trainer, I took a look at these bullets here. Each one of them is a separate file.
Yes,
And,
Jeff, each one of those is a lesson plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just a file. It tells you how to do it. It gives you information about how to go about, whether you're talking about communications or leadership styles and stuff like that. Actually, those are fairly decent lesson plans.
Yeah. Here's one on innovation, which I'm extremely interested in, because the district strategic planning cadre is now an innovation one. As Bruce said, it's really for training. So this is really extensive. Now, if your club does not have, let's say, an extensive training program, there's still a lot you can learn from these modules. But as Bruce alluded to, it's intended for like a significant training program. So I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can kind of get a gist. There's just a lot packed into this. You can see the different topics that are covered here. And see, even here, members, family, and friends. I know my wife, Claire, would love to take this training. But it's a great opportunity. And again, this is, I hadn't gone through this in much detail, but boy, there's just a lot here. I guess the main thing, I'm going to go back to the main document here. So one example in our district, as in other Rotary districts, is that we have this alliance with Toastmasters. And the Toastmasters program is a great opportunity for people to improve in their leadership skill. Because that's kind of how Toastmasters is with public speaking and confidence and things like that. So I think, again, it's incumbent upon us, whether it's at the club level or at the district level, to provide opportunities for people to grow in leadership. Whether it's through something formal like this or more mentorship, but you know, I don't know if that's like why people join Rotary. It may not be in the first one or two because it's usually service and fellowship, but people often grow in leadership as a result of being in Rotary, whether it was something that they were interested in or not. I think it's just there for us to use as a way to grow. So again, it's just a great opportunity. And again, is the idea of linking service to personal and professional growth is really interesting to me. The idea that you can kind of do both. So any thoughts about that one?
Don't forget RLI.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about RLI before, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's and that one's also interesting because it's even though it's growth in Rotary, it's also growth in leadership,
Exactly.
whether it's Rotary or not. Not everything is directly connected to something that's part of Rotary, but it's great. And if we can grow in leadership while providing service, it seems like that's the best of both worlds. Plus, I think it also keeps people engaged if they're
For
seeing
sure.
growth.
Yes. And Eva has her hand up.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see the.
No,
So go
don't
ahead.
apologize. We're just helping.
Thank
I
you.
am not familiar with Toastmaster. What is our connection?
Sunny, do you want to take that?
Sure. Rotary has a formal alliance now with Toastmasters International, which is it's a group that focuses on developing its members' public speaking and leadership skills. They've been around for a while. They're not as big as we are, but they are all over the world. And we are invited to attend their meetings. They're invited to attend ours. They're a source of prospective members and certainly participants for our service projects. And I've joined a Rotary Club. A lot of us have either been Toastmasters or are joining now. Practice speaking when you want to, and otherwise just learn from other people's speaking. Toastmasters has created 8 lessons in the Rotary.org Learning Center expressly for us. And they're really good and they're really interesting. The first one is on how to develop a speech. Then there's one on how to deliver a speech. There's one on how to be inspiring, how to be humorous. Fascinating, really fascinating. So I recommend that you use this alliance as much as you can. And if you have questions, you can get in touch with me or with Ophelia Mletzko from the Zaragoza Club, who is chairing our district's Toastmasters Alliance team at this point.
Thank you.
You're
It's,
welcome.
and again, to me, Rotary and Toastmasters are very complementary with each other. I feel like we are, because there's these leadership opportunities, even if that's not why people join, it's up to us in our leadership, to make sure that they avail themselves of those opportunities, or at least let them be aware of them. It's just a nice nice value added notion of being involved in Rotary is an opportunity to grow as a leader. Okay, the last one, and I chuckle every time I see this for 2 reasons. And I have to give Rotary a lot of credit. It's not easy putting these documents together, and they've really put a lot of time and attention to this. And every word to me is an important word. And when I look at this last one, I like that it says practical. It's not forcing, it's practical committees. And the reason I'm chuckling, which is a very quick anecdote. So when we induct new members and we do a swearing in ceremony, there's a section where it says, Joe, welcome to the club. You have been approved by the responsible committees of the club. And every time I hear responsible committees, I also laugh, because having served on a number of them, I can just say they may be committees, but responsible is a little bit above and beyond occasionally. So I see terms like that, I just laugh. But here it's relevant. Practical committees. Sunny had talked about these kind of 3 tiers of board consideration depending upon the size of the club. I know RLI has a description of it. I would expect it is in Learning Central, but you can imagine, if you're a small club, I think one of you said there was like 15 people. Was it Mesilla Valley?
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah. So you're not going to have 10 committees. It's not practical. In fact, you may have like 2 and they just do a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's practical to club size. The more people that are in the club, and by the way, I don't want to forget this. You do not have to be a member of the club to be on a committee. In fact, if your club sponsors an Interact club or a Rotaract club, or if you have another organization in the community that you work with, they can be on committees too. So you're never limited, unless your bylaws limited, but you're not limited to just having club members be on committees. And that's another opportunity to maybe grow and, I would say, improve committees if you include people that are not in your club, but have a vested interest in your club or a relationship with your club. But it should be practical in part with respect to size. And more is not better. So a club that has 10 committees doesn't mean it's any better than a club with 2 committees. In fact, I've seen the opposite. A club with 2 committees, and those committees are extremely focused, have a relevant action plan they're implementing, they've got goals, they can be very effective. And so just thinking more does not imply at all that that's better. The key is to accomplish the work of the club. And if you're a smaller club, you may not be doing as much work because much doesn't mean it's not important work, but there may not be like 20 projects that a club of 15 people is doing. Vicki, you're with the Metro Club, right?
Right, yes. So
How many
we're a
members
tiny club.
Right.
now.
But think about, so if you haven't seen the Metro Club, because Arturo will usually repost a lot of the club's Facebook on the district Facebook page. Metro gets reposted a lot because they do a lot of really great service projects. But they do a lot of great service projects with a very small group of people. And so to me, Metro is a great example of a club that can be very successful and not be big. And I would guess, Vicki, that you don't have 10 committees.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, technically we probably have 2 committees.
Yeah. So, and to me, that's very practical for a club of its size. And I've always been a fan of the Metro Club.
Thank you.
If the Metro Club were to become 50 people all of a sudden, they could take on more things, but they could almost lose what makes them so unique and successful is how much they've been able to do with a club of its size. So the key, I think, here is go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I met with one of our members yesterday, and when I asked her why she had joined the club, our being small was actually one of the reasons she joined. She wanted to be more.
Well, at least you didn't say to her.
Served us well during this past year because other than our 2 members who moved out of state, we didn't lose any members. We had almost 100% attendance at most of our virtual meetings. We actually gained a member through a service project. And so I think being small made it easier to maintain during the past year, and not lose people and that kind of thing.
It also makes it easier, I would assume, for each person in a smaller club to understand their role because there's fewer people. The larger clubs may be able to get a lot more accomplished, but then you've got the issue of, does everyone have a role? Is everyone engaged? So it's not a one size fits all. The key here is the committee should be practical. And I would venture to guess that the 2 committees of the Metro Club are extremely practical, given what the club does. And that if you ended up having 6 or 7, like what Rotary is promoting, you would lose some practicality because you don't have enough people to warrant having 6 or 7 committees.
You wouldn't have enough people to put on 6 or 7 committees.
Right.
People had to be on like 3 or 4 committees.
Yeah.
Right. There's a similar notion too, and I don't know if Metro, you do this or Mesilla Valley, but it's the same thing with club boards. So there are some clubs that they are the board. So when they meet, let's say once a month, the club, it's a board meeting and it's an official board meeting. They take minutes. So even that notion about, the whole distinction between the club and the board, with smaller clubs, the club may be the board. And so again, I think it's not like there's a better or worse. It's what fits your club. And the key here is being practical. Don't overwork people. Focus on what's important. Have an action plan, have the goals, all of that we've already talked about. And size of an organization does not affect its ability to accomplish. There's benefits. Yes, go ahead.
I find that some of the committees are peopled by members who have been on that committee forever and maybe are not as welcoming to other members as they might be. It's sort of little fiefdoms in the club.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that?
Anyone want to respond before me?
I'm not sure what to say, except that sounds like something to be addressed. And the way to address it is to keep expanding friendships,
And turnover.
And turnover, yes. I would think the club president would have a role in encouraging people to shift around. Cross training is so important. If you get key people who know how to do stuff and they're the only ones, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, they're gone, pancakes on the plaza could fold, that kind of thing.
So if I understood what you were asking and saying, I've seen situations where committees have that kind of turf feel. They've kind of been doing things a certain way and they're not receptive to new people. And as Sunny pointed out, it's up to each club president to kind of set the tone for that. And turnover is important. It may be hard, but again, this notion about being a vibrant club is not easy. If it was, we would all be vibrant. The things we're talking about doing are not easy things to do. The key is have a plan, have a vision, think about strategy. How's this going to work? And not everything's going to work. Just how things are. But this is not slam dunk, easy. Tomorrow we're going to be a vibrant club, everyone. But it's things like what you were asking. That's cultural. that's not just something you snap your fingers and it fixes. When a club has a certain culture over years.
No, especially if those people are doing good work.
Right. But again, not knowing the exact situation, but there is a difference between good and great. There's a difference between present and future, right? So while we want to continue doing the good things, we need to build and grow for the future, which may look very different. And we want to put those new members in a position where they can succeed and help the club 5-10 years from now. So if we don't plant the seeds now for the future, then the future is going to look like the current. And everyone else will have improved or whatever the situation is, and things just kind of fall apart after a while. But that's where the real decision making comes. I think that's why this whole Be a Vibrant Club notion is so relevant. There's a statement at the beginning here. Where is it? Yeah. Create a plan to increase interest and attract more members. As you develop your plan, let your club evolve. I mean, this is planning. And it's kind of understanding and capitalizing on what's going on well now, but not resting on those, but continuing to build and grow. And that's the hard part.
It's been said that we're always either expanding or contracting, that there's really no hover. So from that vantage point, we definitely want to be moving in a direction that we choose.
Yeah. That's it's a really important point. Any other input on that? We've got about 15 minutes left. Think about, for those of you who are on membership committees or club presidents, I like to think about, every member that comes into a club is important. There's some that I would view as strategically important, meaning this person can affect some change, either by their personality or they're a different age group from most of the other people, or there's something about them that if they're put in the right position, there can be significant change, which I would want to see as an improvement. I'd like to see every person contribute and affect change. That's why I get so excited about membership. But when I also think about diversity, which is still important, it's like if I bring in, or if the club brings in someone who has a different perspective, or is in a different age group, or a different background, or different life experiences, whatever it is, that person has an opportunity, in part because of who they are, to help plant some of those seeds where it might be a force for others to do so, because they may just fit in. Like, I recruited my best friend, he's just like me. I'm like, okay, well, do we need more than one Jeff in the club? I don't think so.
Maybe.
Well, but I think
We could use 10 or 20 Jeffs, actually.
Well, but I think it's a consideration that if we just bring in people like us, we'll be a bigger group of us. And diversity is an opportunity for us to grow through our own innate skills, behaviors, personalities, interests, and it just adds to all of this. Just another consideration.
Completely agree. Go ahead, Vicki.
How do you attract people who aren't like you? I mean, if you, that's not that I'm not saying it just seems like it's more difficult because perhaps you're not in contact with them as much, or, because you're all of a certain age, they don't feel comfortable because they'd be like the youngest person, or that kind of thing. So that's, I think it's sometimes a challenge.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, everyone look and see who in their sphere of influence might be interested and not yet invited. Do lots of service projects that make you visible and have people want to join you. Collaborate with other organizations that have different interests and different makeups, and invite them to join you. You know, it's people are everywhere. We just want to open up to that.
I think so I agree with what you just said, Sunny. I think it also is something that should be in the membership strategy of the plan of the club. So it's not random. Got it. Thank you, Andrea. But these are not random things. It's a concerted effort. And if it's a concerted effort, it should be spelled out in a plan as part of the membership strategy. How are we going to do this? Do we agree that it's important for us to diversify? If the answer is yes, then just like what Bob was saying earlier, the key is how. How do we do that? And again, not everything is going to work, but we should be monitoring it. We're going to try something new. We want to get different type of people into the club. How are we going to do that? I like, Bob, when you gave your talk to us and you talked about representing the community. So as a membership strategy, if we're up to me, I would say our strategy or our goal, let's start with our goal. Our goal may be to grow a certain size, but our real goal is to look more like our community. How are we going to do that? And maybe that's another opportunity to bring in the family and friends. Maybe instead of me talking to someone, maybe my son talks to someone that they know, different age group, they get along better. I mean, it's all sorts of opportunities, but the key is to have that concerted effort and that the club understands that this is what we're trying to do, and it'll make us more of a vibrant, sustainable club. A lot to think about here. So we got about 10 minutes left. Any questions or final thoughts about this? This is one of those where it's not like everything's going to fall into place immediately, but hopefully this will have planted seeds. For Vicky, maybe it reinforced some that or makes more sense from last year to this year. But this is like more like ongoing learning. There's always more to unpack. It's like layers of an onion. The more you kind of dive in and the more you ask and the more you ponder, the more kind of it opens up to you.
Jeff,
Yes.
I've done this workshop a few times, and just occurred to me something that's sub rosa, but that we don't really directly address, is the aspect of allowing our members to experience being part of the larger whole. This can be part of the starting with why, but I'm thinking, for example, when I was doing club visits, not everyone knew that we were going to have a woman as RI president starting next July 1st. And maybe everyone doesn't know that just in the last few days, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of Africa being polio free. And there are just things. We have a district conference coming up in April. Everyone should be there because it's an opportunity for new friends and new learning. Anyway, I sometimes think that gets skipped when we're talking about a vibrant club. So I thought I'd throw it in.
So I want to say something too. There are just a lot of people who look right past, don't look at Rotary because they don't think they fit the mold of what they think Rotary is. I've been trying to educate some younger people. Just when our governor came down, he talked about inclusivity. And I'm like, he's absolutely right. There are people who just don't think. You don't have to be rich to be in Rotary. You don't have to be a certain race or ethnicity or international to be in Rotary. I mean, if you have an idea, if you have a desire to serve, even if it's just Meals on Wheels, that's Rotary.
Yep.
So that's something that I plan to do as president-elect, and I've already started talking to people. Are you serious? I could join Rotary. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
That's great, Darlene.
Mhm.
So very quickly, and well, I wasn't necessarily going to mention it, but it kind of came up as we're kind of winding down. So I'm going to be president next year again. And Bruce may know this, so I'm just going to ask him. If he doesn't, I'll answer. But Bruce, do you know how many of the board members who are currently on the board are going to stay on the board next year when I'm president?
Bruce,
You're
you're
on mute.
muted.
I didn't want to
Oh,
call
okay.
him out.
Now I can talk.
Sorry.
So say the question again.
The question is, do you know how many of the current board members in our club are going to serve in the same role on the board next year when I'm
Very
president?
few, if any.
Yes, the answer is 0.
Yes.
It is our strategy to have significant turnover because new members had not been involved. And we had kind of like what one of you were saying is the committees were kind of going along and doing good things. And each of the committee chairs have been serving for at least 3 years, some longer. And and it's so interesting. All of the current board members said, yes, it would be great if you can find a successor because we didn't have succession planning. So yes, I'm not like thrilled about the idea of serving another year. And all the new members who I approached said, you bet I would jump at the opportunity. And so it's going to be a whole new ballgame. That was not the strategy I had when I was president the first time because the circumstances were different. So I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong. I'm just saying circumstances dictate certain things. And so it's going to be a very different feel next year and kind of exciting. So just every situation is different. COVID has created an environment for us where we have to think differently. We just have to. And whatever worked a couple of years ago may not work the same now, but what I've seen are excellent examples of growth and improvement as a result of what is basically a calamity. And I think for all of us, this idea of being a vibrant club, we always have to look around and think and not be complacent and not rest and not say all is good and just wipe our hands and but always be thinking and trying.
Jeff,
Yes.
my parting shot, it's really valuable to shake things up. If what you look forward to is exactly like what you just did, you're going to lose people because it's more of the same. So have your meetings and your projects be full of delightful surprises and celebrations and acknowledgements, and always be looking for fun ways and interesting ways to engage people.
Bob, any closing remarks from you?
Well, this has been a great session, tremendous amount of sharing of ideas and concepts and great questions. A lot of them still to be answered. I appreciate everybody participating. Something I just want to bring up, and this is sort of, I don't know, very technical, but everywhere I go, when I ask questions, there's always complaint about the database, Rotary International, our club runner, everybody, nobody's satisfied with it. Nah, that's okay. It's okay, because if people are unsatisfied, we'll continue to work to improve it. But I just remember, and I'm not being, this is not a paid political announcement. Rotary International is international. There's 1.2 million members. There's 35,000 clubs in 500 plus districts. Many of us speak different languages. And so Rotary.org and Club Runner have to manage and help everybody in these situations. Club Central. See, I'm even confused. Club Runner is more of a localized database management and communication system. And not every club runs under Club Runner. There are some districts and some clubs that have different database management and communication systems. That's the one we use. And it doesn't necessarily communicate with Club Central or Rotary.org. So it's just something, that's our architecture that we're constantly working on and constantly trying to improve. And it's not perfect, and it will never be perfect. But I think it's incumbent on us to learn more about it and reach out to people that are smart about it when we find a roadblock or an impasse, and how we get around it. So
can I ask a question on that real quick? Question, is there any plan or intention to update the Club Runner website content management system at any point within Club Runner?
well, remember, Club Runner is an off-the-shelf system that we enroll in and we pay for. So
Right.
we, it's not our system. It's something we use, we pay for. So
Yeah, I realize that. I was wondering, is there any intention?
to answer your question, no, I don't know of any.
Okay.
But I think it's fair to say that there are always opportunities to improve the content on the district website. And I think the front page I think the information is great. I think it's much more organized. But in terms of content, there's always opportunities to improve what is on the district website.
Yeah.
And I believe we are going to add Rotaract clubs to our Club Runner database, which will be helpful.
That would be great.
That's the plan. We're working on that. Yeah. But just to wrap up again, thanks for everybody joining us today. This is a great opportunity for us to continue to grow our leadership. And we will be having an RLI again sometime before the end of this calendar year. And don't forget about our blood drive that's ongoing right now. And World Polio Day is coming up in October, so we should be thinking about how we're going to raise money to fight polio. And I've been telling people we've had 2 cases of polio this year, so that's great. I mean, that's freaking amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for participating on a Saturday. And if you have any follow-up questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out. If you want to discuss scenarios, we're always here to help.
And
Thank
Jeff,
you all very much.
Jeff, we're very appreciative to you for making time for
Yes.
this in the middle of
Yeah.
everything you have going on.
Absolutely, Jeff.
My
Thank
pleasure.
Thank you all very much. Very helpful. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. See you soon, I hope.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. And stay
Thank
safe.
you.
I learned so
You
much.
too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cinda, good to see you. Bye, everyone.